your man, Louie Tee. Welcome to the 2019 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series where your man, Louie Tee, aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2019 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale. Single, double, triple, homer. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series. We cannot tell how these players are going to pan out, and I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we'll get a score for each and every single player selected in X said team's draft, apply bonuses when necessary, get an aggregate score, divide by the number of picks, which will yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer out there, are in total control, as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Some examples would be Bolts, next, LAC, next, LA Chargers, next, Chargers. You get where I'm going with this. As a matter of fact, the next team up in the series is none other than the Los Angeles Chargers, who, in my estimation, greatly overachieved in 2018. Now, if you're a Chargers fan out there, you may be saying, Louie Tee, what the hell are you talking about? We were trending upward. We were a good football team. All we needed was a steady kicker, and we were going to be just fine. We did what we were supposed to do last year. I vehemently disagree. This is a team that was banged up. This is a team that rolled the shoulders of a 34, 5, 6-year-old quarterback in Philly Rivers, who had an MVP caliber type season last year. I didn't see this coming. They got hot late in the season. They went into some tough environments like Kansas City and won. They had the beatdown of the Ravens coming to their building and slapping them around late in the season. You didn't really know what the Chargers were going to do once they got to the postseason, but they got hot, gave it a run in terms of the divisional crown, fell just short of that, and ended up going to Baltimore wild card weekend in a game that I predicted they would win. And that was a rematch of the game, like I said, when the Baltimore Ravens came into Los Angeles, slapped them around, and left with the dub late in the season. They were able to avenge that and then ultimately get to the divisional round where they were absolutely smashed by the New England Patriots. But this is a team that, when you look at how they're constructed, they're close. And I think they needed to make some changes, and they did that for the most part. And they've said goodbye to some of their players, and they're going to bring in some new talent. And I've always liked Tom Telesco. I've always made fun of Tom Telesco. He is a guy that I've talked about with my $100 allotment draft strategy, which is, I coined it after Tom Telesco. And I have a Chargers viewer that loves the Chargers. I love talking to him. He's my favorite Chargers fan to talk to. And he refers to Tom Telesco as Coupon Tom, and always looking for a good deal. And you can always count on Tom Telesco to make his selections in the draft exactly where he's supposed to make his selections. I don't even have to look anymore. I know the Chargers have 7 picks. They're going to have the same 7 picks going into the draft. They're going to leave the draft with those same 7 picks. They're not going to move up. They're not going to trade back. They're going to select in this particular draft. They were the 28th selection. They were the 28th pick in every single round, and they did not move. And that's the strategy of the Chargers most seasons or most years in the draft with Tom Telesco as their GM. They're not a flashy team. They're not looking to make a big splash. They're looking to do exactly what they're supposed to do. The board falls to them, and they make selections like they did in 2019. I call it the $100 strategy, essentially, the $100 allotment, if you will, where you go into the draft with $100, or you go into the mall with $100. You go in, you buy $100 worth of items, don't go over by a single penny, and you come out feeling good about your purchase, but you do not go over that $100 limit. That's essentially what Tom Telesco does year in, year out when talking NFL draft. So he did it again. 7 selections going in, 7 selections coming out. Did not move up or down. Took his picks as they came to him. We're going to break down the 2019 NFL draft of the Los Angeles Chargers, and we start in the first round, 28th overall pick. Defensive lineman out of Notre Dame, Jerry Tillery. Heavy artillery is the pick to get this Chargers draft underway. So I'm not going to break down Jerry Tillery as I've already done so during the Draft Prospects 101 series. So if you're looking for a thorough breakdown of Jerry Tillery and all the other prospects I was able to get to prior to the draft, hit up the Louie Tee Network, go to the playlist section, find the 2019 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series. There you'll find a thorough breakdown, including film, of all the players I was able to get to prior to the draft. That includes Jerry Heavy Artillery. And that's one of my favorite players off that Notre Dame Fighting Irish defense. There were a couple of guys that I was really big. And I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. I've already said this before, but for those of you not aware, I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish college football fan. And so I love this pick for the Chargers. You had another player who I think was my favorite defender on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish defense that you took a little bit later on that I thought was very underrated this entire draft process. And we'll talk about him when we get there. But in speaking about Jerry Tillery, this is a guy with tremendous upside. You're not drafting Jerry Tillery here for what he did at the collegiate ranks, even though he had a breakout 2018 campaign. Obviously, the Stanford game highlights that. But you're drafting him for what he can become. This guy is barely scratching the surface. Very smart, intelligent, thoughtful guy. But you can't teach 6'7". You can't teach the wingspan that this guy possesses. And he, to me, has, and my comp for him, if you didn't watch the video, was DeForest Buckner, Defoe. Who? Defoe. And I think this is a guy that could be, and if you're not aware, Defoe just had a 12.5 sack season for the San Francisco 49ers. So you see the maturation there. You're hoping that Jerry Tillery can morph into that kind of player for you. They have this same type of body type and structure, same long limbs, same ability to get to the quarterback. Now it's all about Jerry Tillery putting that to use at the NFL level. I'm excited for this opportunity he's going to have with the Chargers because they've pretty much redone their defensive line. Let's take a look at their needs going into the draft. We'll go ahead and take what I deem to be the biggest need off the board in defensive line off of their needs. But defensive line for me was the biggest need going into the draft. Why? Because they're revamping their defensive line. I thought they were going to re-sign Darius Philon. I really thought that was a young guy that was ascending, playing some of his best football, that upward trajectory you're looking for at this point of his career. And I thought the Chargers were going to try to take advantage of all the stuff that they have done with him to get him to this point and try to cash in on that. And instead, they allowed him to walk. He's now an Arizona Cardinal. And so, along with no more Corey Liuget, who got injured late in the season last year, and you decided not to pick up his option, and now he's a free agent. I think once he gets healthy, someone's going to sign Corey Liuget pretty quickly. But so those are two guys that were impactful for you a season ago, no longer on that defensive line. Now you're looking at the Jones kid you took last year out of NC State. Obviously, I thought Damian Square was going to be another guy that walked away in free agency, but you just re-signed him. So that's going to give you some depth. It makes the defensive line that much hardier up front. But you were lacking star power up front. If Brandon Meebane's the best you've got on your defensive line, you've got a problem on your hands. And so you're hoping that Justin Jones can develop. You're hoping that Jerry Tillery is the guy that can take over the mantle along that defensive line and give you some pressure up front and help you stop the run. And so defensive line, to me, was the biggest need going into the draft. You addressed that right away. Linebacker, to me, no team was hit harder with injuries at the linebacker position than this Chargers football team. At the end of the season, they literally were playing with safeties on the field. Literally 7 defensive backs on the field at times for this Chargers football team because of the lack of depth at linebacker due to injuries. It was bad last year. Really bad. Gus Bradley deserves an award for what he was able to do with this defense with all of the injuries to the linebacker position. And so he had to get creative. A lot of different sets with safeties on the field, playing backer. And I was amazed at the production you got out of some of these guys because of the position that you were being put in last season. And so kudos to Gus Bradley for finding a way to get it done when the odds were kind of stacked against him. But you can't allow that to happen again. The lack of depth at linebacker almost cost you a season ago. Got to attack that. And they did in this draft, and I thought they attacked it aggressively throughout. And they did it in free agency with Thomas Davis as well. So you got to like what they did at the linebacker position this offseason to really upgrade what was a major position of need in the offseason. Offensive line, to me, I thought you got some good production out of your guards on the interior with Schofield and Feeney. But look, you drafted Forrest Lamp for a reason in the second round. He has got to develop. He's got to give you something. But that's not the reason offensive line is third in terms of needs here. I'm thinking right tackle, Sam Tevi, Tavai, you call him whatever the hell you want. I call him stinking ass right tackle. That's what I call him. You need some help over there. And I have an issue with what you decided to do at right tackle in this particular draft because you need help now, not in the future. And I don't think the guy you drafted is going to be able to provide that for you in 2019, which is exactly what I think you needed. But that's another debate for later on in this draft. Safety, it's not as big a need. You have stuff, but you lost your starting safety in Jaleel Adai. He moved on in free agency. And so I think you're looking for a guy that's going to allow your safeties to play around the line of scrimmage where they're more comfortable. Derwin James, to me, is best around the line of scrimmage. And so I feel like you want a guy that's going to allow him to be him. And the best way to do that is to get a guy that can play single high free safety and allow Derwin James to be a chess piece closer to the line of scrimmage. And so I thought you needed to attack that. You did in this draft. We'll talk about that here shortly. Cornerback, to me, I just think it was a depth issue. That's why it's so far back in terms of needs. You could argue that it's not as big a need, but I just felt like your number 2 corner, because you love what you're getting out of King as a nickel slash, boundary corner, but more of a nickel than anything else. And then obviously Casey Hayward has been a stud for you since coming over from Green Bay. But I just think that number 2 cornerback position is kind of in flux. You really don't know what you're going to get from that position from week to week. And so I thought you could have used an upgrade there potentially. And then wide receiver, obviously Tyrell Williams moves on in free agency to the Raiders. So that leaves a void. You feel good about Mike Williams. You feel good, obviously, about Keenan Allen. And if he stays healthy, he's one of the better receivers in football. And then Travis Benjamin, solid third option, but not great, right? And then after those 3 guys, what do you really have at receiver? Are you trying to sell me on Artavis Scott? Am I supposed to get excited about some of these other guys that you have? If there's one thing I can say the Chargers have done really well over the years, whether it's a Dontrell Inman or one of these other guys, is that they always find talented, Tyrell Williams is a great example, find talented football players at receiver with unsung names that aren't household. So if there's one position that I'll cut them some slack on and say, you'll find a guy, okay? Like the kid out of Texas Tech that you currently have on your roster that I actually liked coming out of Texas Tech a couple of years ago. You'll find a guy, you'll shine him up, make him look really nice, and he'll perform well for you. So that's why receiver is kind of to the back of the line, because I think you'll figure it out. And Phillip Rivers finds guys, and you should be fine. But I thought you could have used a body or 2 at receiver, and it wouldn't have hurt for some depth purposes. But nonetheless, like I said, love the selection. First round, 28th overall pick of Jerry Tillery, a guy that I think his upside is tremendous. And I think he's going to not only help you stop the run, but he's going to be a guy that I think potentially can get you double-digit sacks down the road. He's not ready to do that right away, but I think he's a guy that can come in and give you some interior pass rush, something you really haven't had in Los Angeles for quite some time. You've got one of the nastiest 1-2 punches in terms of tandems coming off the edge in Ingram and Boza. Now you add a guy that can give you some rush on the interior in Jerry Tillery. First round, 28th overall selection, defensive lineman out of Notre Dame. Jerry Tillery, for me, is...
Hits right high! Hits it deep! It is out of here!
So we move on to the second round, 60th overall selection, defensive back out of Delaware. Nasir Adderley is the pick. So Nasir Adderley, 6 feet, 206 pounds, 4.54 40 at his pro day before he came up lame with a hamstring injury. He was compromised at the combine as well, didn't run there, tried to run at his pro day, didn't work out there, but running a 4.54 on a bum hamstring says a lot about his athleticism. 38-inch vert, 10'9" broad. This is a guy with athleticism. You watch him, you see it. So that's not something you question with him anyhow. But 11 career INTs spells out the fact that this guy can go and get the football. Now, he's got a cornerback background, but played safety. There's some inconsistencies with his game, some things he needs to iron out. But all in all, he's a guy that you feel really comfortable putting in the middle of your football field and saying, hey, run red line to red line, cover grass everywhere, and allow our baller safety that we drafted in the first round last year to be himself and not have to worry about the back half. And so that's what you're looking for from Nasir Adderley here in the second round. Let's take safety off the board because I deemed it a need, not one that was very high, but yet a need nonetheless. And you take care of that here with Nasir Adderley in the second round. An extremely versatile defender that adds special teams value as well as a free safety. Adderley has the range and ball skills to be a true difference maker, although hesitation and indecisiveness can limit his impact at times, as I just mentioned. In addition, Adderley can play cornerback as well as nickel or boundary, so where he'll play will be determined by the team that drafts him. Couple that with NFL bloodlines, his cousin is Herb Adderley, the Hall of Fame defensive back, and his kick return prowess, and this is a potential game-changing player in the second round here for the Chargers. My comp for him is Jesse Bates III, a guy that the Cincinnati Bengals drafted in the second round a season ago out of Wake Forest. Came into the league, similar body type, similar ball skills, great production there, and a guy that had special teams ability as well. So I see a lot of similarities between JB3 and Nasir Adderley. That being said, this is a guy that I really like. I feel like he gives you a lot of versatility in that secondary, something that the Chargers have done a really good job of utilizing with their players, is getting guys that are extremely versatile, putting them in multiple different positions on the field, and having guys succeed for them in multiple spots. He's a guy that can do that for them as well, similar to Desmond King, if you will, a guy that they've moved all around on the football field, and he's been successful for them. And so Nasir Adderley is a guy that I really like. I think he fits a big-time need for them on their defense. They're looking for a guy that can play that free safety, that single high free safety position for them. And I think Adderley can do that. He's got some work to do. He's not a finished product. There are some holes in his game as we speak. I talked about the hesitation. I talked about a guy that let a lot of balls go over his head last season and gave up some big plays. But there's a lot of talent here as well. And so if the Chargers are able to tap into that, get the best of Nasir Adderley, this is a guy that I look at and I say he could be the missing piece defensively for the Chargers that takes them over the top. We'll see. But this is a talented Chargers defense. You're adding another talented piece, and you've just added two talented pieces to what was already a talented defense. You got to feel good about the addition of Nasir Adderley, second round, 60th overall selection, defensive back out of Delaware. Nasir Adderley for me is So now we move to the third round, 91st pick overall, offensive lineman out of Sioux Falls. Trey Pipkins is the pick. So this here is your answer to Sam Tevi's struggles at right tackle. I don't know if this is an immediate answer, though. And this is the pick that I told you I didn't necessarily love. Now, granted, you waited to the third round to try to attack offensive tackle. That's a no-no. If you're looking for a starting tackle, generally speaking, those go quickly. In terms of the first two rounds, quickly. You need to act fast if you want a starting caliber tackle generally. Now, you may be able to find in deeper draft classes guys that can start for you right away in the third round, but it's generally speaking a matter of, hey, let me get mine quickly before they all go. And we know tackles much like edge rushers in these drafts. Limited supply only, get it while supplies last. And I thought you waited a little bit too late. You tried to get a little too cute at the tackle position, and you're ending up with a guy that to me is a project. Now, he passes the eyeball test as Trey Pipkins. When you watch him, he looks like an NFL tackle. He's a big guy. However, I think that when you watch him at Sioux Falls, you're like, man, this dude is dominating, which that's my only prerequisite when you're at a small school, dominate the competition. He's throwing guys out of the bar and he's plopping on top of them, pancake, extra syrup on top. I mean, it looks it looks really yummy, scrum-dilly-umptious what he's doing to guys out there. I'm like, man, that pancake with some syrup sure does look really scrumptious. But then when he gets to the East-West Shrine game, and I studied that game because that was the one time you got to see him play against real talent. I thought he got his ass whooped. I thought he struggled in that game mightily. So I walked away from that game saying, look, athletically, he's fine. He's on par with these guys. He's not shell-shocked from the athleticism and the leap in athleticism that he'll be seeing on a week-in, week-out basis. That's not going to be the reason he doesn't succeed. He's just really raw. From a technical standpoint, he's not ready. He's not ready. You know, you put him in front of Von Miller is going to eat him alive. Okay? You put him in front of Frank Clark. These are guys that are in your division. All right? You put him in front of Frank Clark is going to hand him his draws sideways. So I don't think he's ready to start. And if Sam Tevi's got to go back out there, man, it could get ugly for you in 2019. It was ugly in 2018. That's for damn sure. 6'6", 309. I told you he looks the part. 34-inch arms. He looks the part. 5'1", 240. He looks the part. All right? An offensive tackle that passes the NFL eyeball test with good attributes like long arms, good feet, and a nasty disposition. He is very nasty, okay? Pipkins dominated Division II players en route to a nod to the East-West Shrine game where he was baptized. But he showed that athletically he was game, but technically far from it. Thus, with some work, the Chargers could potentially have a linchpin tackle on their hands. However, he needs some work. And I'm not sure if he's ready to help you right away, which is fine. It's fine if you're projecting long-term with this guy because he has left tackle potential, not right tackle, left tackle potential. But right now, Russell Okung is fine over there. And so you need somebody to step in at right tackle. I'm not sure if this guy's ready to do that for you right now. I'm really not. So it may be some more Sam Tevi for you, man. I don't know. Maybe you've done some things or you brought in some guys to compete that you like that can help you, but I don't know. Let's take offensive line off the board, though. That was a big need for me, right tackle potentially. And maybe this guy comes along a lot faster than I'm giving him credit potentially for. And he works through training camp, looks outstanding, gets some reps in the preseason and kills it. And next thing you know, he's ready to go week one. Highly unlikely after what I saw, but, you know, you never know with these guys. You know, you just don't know. My comp for him is Charles Leno Jr., the ex-Boise State product that was drafted by the Chicago Bears, and he turned out to be a steal for them as a 7th rounder. So he could end up being a really good player for you. As of right now, I'm not sold. And so I don't necessarily love this pick, but I don't hate it either. Here in the 3rd round, 91st pick overall, offensive lineman out of Sioux Falls, Trey Pipkins for me is... So you want to talk about loving picks? I love this next selection, however, for the Los Angeles Chargers. 4th round, 130th overall pick, linebacker out of Notre Dame. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. Drew Tranquill is the pick. So Drew Tranquill was one of my favorite Notre Dame Fighting Irish defenders. To me, he epitomizes what you look for in a defensive player. He's smart, he's tough, he's athletically gifted, He's assignment oriented, but not afraid to make plays. Takes right angles. Like, he just does everything the right way. When he's a captain, that doesn't hurt. 2-time captain at Notre Dame. When I look at Drew Tranquill making the switch from safety to linebacker, I was skeptical at first as a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. I didn't know what to expect from him. As a safety, he was solid, but he wasn't a guy that really moved the needle that much. He makes the transition to linebacker, and all of a sudden, he's one of the better players that the Notre Dame Fighting Irish have on their defense. And I just didn't think he got enough recognition for what he brought to the table. He didn't make a ton of big plays, but it was his ability to get guys in the right spot, his ability to do his job so well that he made other guys' jobs around him that much easier. And I thought he was one of the unsung heroes of that Notre Dame Fighting Irish defense that helped them get to the playoffs last season. And I thought he was sold during the draft process. And I think you got a steal here in the 4th round. It was funny. I was talking to a couple of viewers during the draft party, and I showed my linebacker list and where I had all my linebackers rated, and I had Drew Tranquill up there somewhere in that 4, 5, 6 range, somewhere in there, and someone was mocking me saying he was too high. And look at Drew Tranquill now, a 4th round pick in a draft where linebackers weren't the hot and heavy commodities of some of these other positions. Drew Tranquill, to me, was one of the better linebackers in this draft. So, and again, I'm not just saying this because I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. I mean, Tavon Coney, all right, was a Notre Dame Fighting Irish linebacker that didn't get drafted, and I get it. He wasn't all that great, all right? Drew Tranquill is a different story, however. 6'2", 234, 4.57 40. So, again, athletic and a nice build, too, at 6'2", 234. 31 reps of 2 1/4. So, this guy is a physical linebacker. And you see it in his play. 37.5-inch vert, again, speaks to the explosiveness and the athleticism that Drew Tranquill possesses. A smart, tough, reliable ex-safety turned linebacker with outstanding athletic traits. A leader on and off the field that makes other players around him better. Good in underneath coverage, struggles the further he gets away from the line of scrimmage. I don't like my Drew Tranquill 25 yards away from the field with his back turned chasing a tight end up the field. I'll pass on that. I like my Drew Tranquill 7 yards away from the line of scrimmage, 12 yards away from the line of scrimmage, keying quarterbacks' eyes and picking up guys running through his zone and pattern matching. I like that Drew Tranquill much better. So I don't want Drew Tranquill running up the sideline on a wheel route 20 yards down the field. That's when he could get into trouble. But when he's underneath in an underneath zone, he's outstanding in that regard. But fearless taking on blockers, shedding them to make plays, and takes great angles to the ball carrier. I just love what he brings to the table, man. I think Drew Tranquill is going to fit into this defense tremendously. And I just think his combination of athleticism, toughness, smarts, speed, all of the things that this Chargers defense is predicated on and based off of, he brings to the table. You lack depth at linebacker last year. He's going to provide you with that. And again, sooner rather than later, he's going to crack this lineup because he's that kind of a football player. He's going to help you on specials right away. And eventually, Drew Tranquill going to be a contributor on this Chargers defense. Mark my words. My comp for him is a guy that you just signed in free agency in Thomas Davis. Remember, Thomas Davis came into the league as a undersized, and again, this was in those days when he came into the league, he was undersized as a linebacker because he was an ex-safety at Georgia, and people didn't know really where to put him. He was a hybrid safety linebacker. He was a positionless player. He was a tweener, and no one really knew what to do with him, but he was uber athletic. He was a guy that could flow to the football and make plays, and that's what Drew Tranquill is, a guy that's an ex-safety, very athletic, and now his body type fits in today's NFL. And I think he can learn a lot from a guy like Thomas Davis. And I think that's who I comp him to. The athleticism is similar. The size is similar. There are a lot of striking similarities between the two. And I just love the position that Drew Tranquill is in Los Angeles with this Chargers football team, because he's going to get to learn from a guy like Thomas Davis, who I think still has a lot of good football left in the tank, and also going to be suspended for the first 4 games of the season. Is that this year or that was last year? That was last year, right? I think that was last year. Anyway, this is going to be a good opportunity for him to learn from a really good football player. So in the 4th round, 100, and let's take linebacker off the board. I told you that was a need that I thought was big for the Chargers after all the injuries last year and the lack of depth at the end of the season. You needed to address linebacker. You did that here, and you're going to do it later on in the draft with a guy that is very intriguing, and we'll talk about him when we get there. But in the 4th round, 130th overall selection, a linebacker out of Notre Dame, Drew Tranquill, for me, is... So this next pick is somewhat of a head scratcher. I'm not going to lie to you. 5th round, 166th overall pick. Quarterback out of North Dakota State, Easton Stick, is the pick. All right, so I'm going to be real with you. I've talked about this on my podcast, Louie Tee Network podcast, available on Stitcher, Google Music Play, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, and of course the website, LouieTeeNetwork.net. If you haven't already checked it out, what are you waiting on? Louie Tee Network podcast, available on all, major platforms. But talked about this ad nauseum, how I talked about it also on the draft party. I didn't believe that Easton Stick was going to get drafted. I didn't. So I had to issue out a 00. Okay, I was wrong. 00 for Easton Stick. I didn't think he was going to be drafted. I told everyone that kept talking to me about guys like Easton Stick and Brett Rippon and all of these guys, Trace McSorley, even though I kind of threw Trace McSorley in at the end and was like, hey, he might get drafted. But all of these guys were like, they're not getting drafted. Leave me alone and stop asking me about these guys. They're not getting drafted. All right? Don't ask me about these dudes. All right? Don't ask me about the Washington State quarterback. What was his name? Minshew, Gardner Minshew. Don't ask me about Gardner Minshew. He's not getting drafted. I was wrong. He got drafted, and so did Easton Stick. So I apologize. But I really don't know what you're doing here. Like, this one is sketchy, okay? For one, you've still got the ex-Ohio State product on the roster, and I don't know how you feel about him. So that's number one, all right? He's still around, and because of that, you still have a young guy that you're trying to develop. And maybe that says to me, this pick does at least, that you don't love what he brings to the table. Okay, that's fine, but you go out, you get a veteran in Tyrod Taylor, you bring him in the fold, and so all of a sudden now you've got 4 quarterbacks on the roster right now. Something's got to give. You're not keeping 4 quarterbacks, obviously. I don't think anyone's going to fight you over Easton Stick either. However, he's an athlete, similar to Taysom Hill in New Orleans. He can do some other things potentially. And so when Tom Telesco was asked after the draft was over, hey, man, you might do some crazy stuff with Easton Stick. He's an athlete. He's like, look, he's a quarterback right now, but I'm not saying that he's not eligible to do other things. I'm not saying anything. He's a quarterback, though. I really don't know what the hell's... And this is my thing. If you're going to draft a quarterback at this point with the Chargers, and he's going to be the heir apparent to the throne, it needs to be a real, actual quarterback. Like Easton Stick is a developmental guy. Obviously, you got time to develop him if you're going to do that because Phillip Rivers isn't going anywhere. As a matter of fact, it's extension time for Philly Rivers. So, I get it. But Easton Stick, 6'1", 224, 4'6", 240. He's an athlete. But really? Like, that's how you feel? Like, I'm not blown away by this guy. I'm going to just quickly give you some things that jumped out at me. RPO and play action fake make up a ton of his throws. So, he got a lot of easy throws to wide open targets. Why? Because their play action game is sick. One, they run a ton of play action. A ton of it. So he's dropping back and they're running play action and teams are biting up on run because they run it effectively. And he's got time to throw. They're the New England Patriots. This is another thing I put down. They played for the Patriots of the FCS. Like, they're the New England Patriots, and everyone else is the Jets, Bills, and the Dolphins. Like, they dominated FCS. He won the championship 3 out of 4 years in college, and it's not a coincidence. They've been winning championships at North Dakota State, it seems like, for the last decade. Like, in the last 10 years, they probably won 7 or 8 of the championships. Like, that's how good they are. So there'd be times where he'd be in the pocket standing for 7 seconds before he threw the football. It's ridiculous. He's undersized for the position, obviously at 6'1", but that really doesn't matter anymore. I think we figured that out with Kyler Murray going number 1 overall. But you've got to be a rare talent for that to not matter as much. Accurate when his feet are set. Again, he had so much time at North Dakota State that it was sickening at times watching him stand and build a house in the pocket. I mean, it was crazy how much time he had in some of these games. He's a tremendous athlete. All right, I just said he's a 4.62 guy. They weren't shy about running him at North Dakota State. It was a part of the offense. And that's why RPOs work, because he could easily pull it out, read option style, and run it. And he did it quite a bit. And that's something you got to respect. And so he goes read option. It looks like a run. He could pull it and run himself. And then he pulls it out and throws it to a wide open tight end over the middle of the field or a wide open receiver. And there's not much you can do about it. But when he is challenged, when he is pressured, when he has to move and his feet aren't set, he's inaccurate. So, and he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world either. I didn't know exactly where this was coming from. Again, you've got quarterbacks on the roster. All right, Cardale Jones, maybe you love him, maybe you don't. All right, this kind of says to me that you don't love him necessarily if you're bringing in competition. But also Tyrod Taylor in the mix. He's making the team because he's a veteran. You need a veteran when you're a veteran team yourself trying to win. You're not looking for a young guy to come in and steady the ship if Philly Rivers goes down for a 2-week stretch, which isn't going to happen because he never gets hurt. But you like that veteran influence just in case. I don't know what this is. I don't know if you're going to use him in a Taysom Hill type of role or if he's just a guy you're looking to develop and he's a stash and draft, draft and stash type guy that, down the road may be able to help you. I don't know. My comp for him is Chase Daniel, undersized quarterback that ran a read option type of offense at Missouri coming out. Chase Daniel, not nearly the athlete that Easton Stick is, but nonetheless, he reminds me a lot of Chase Daniel. But in any event, 5th round, 166th pick overall, quarterback out of North Dakota State, Easton Stick is So this next pick, 6th round, 200th overall selection, linebacker out of Houston, Umeki Egbule is the pick. Umeki Egbule is a very fascinating selection here in the 6th round. 6'2", 245, 33-inch arms, 4'6", 540. The guy is the first thing that jumped off the screen at me watching him on tape is, God damn, this dude is huge. In a league where the linebackers are shrinking and becoming faster and faster and teams are trading in size for speed, you're not getting the 245, 250-pound linebacker very often in this league anymore. Most guys that are drafted are sub 240 now because you're trading in size for speed. And that's okay. That's what the league is turning into, a league of guys that have to be able to run. But this guy offers you a rare combination of size and speed. But when I watch him on tape, I'm like, man, this dude is huge. And they trusted him in coverage quite a bit. And that speaks to the athleticism that he provides. This is a guy that I'm intrigued by. I felt like he was not used in the proper capacity at Houston because this dude, to me, offers you the ability to get to the quarterback. When I watched him rush, I got more excited watching him rush the quarterback than I did dropping into coverage or running 25, 30 yards down the field with a tight end or receiver, which is nice. for a 6'2", 245-pound linebacker, which he's capable of. But I got excited when I saw this guy come off the edge and take a tackle and stick his dick in the dirt. I got excited when I watched this guy bend the corner and run past the tackle and make him look silly, bending that corner, shortening that edge, and getting to the quarterback. I'm like, are y'all seeing this? This dude has legit pass rushing ability, yet they're not rushing him. But 2 times a game. Like, this is a guy that I don't know what the Chargers are looking for from him. They may say to themselves, hey, we got ourselves a guy that can drop into coverage and can do some things. And I hope they see him as a guy that can rush the quarterback. That's what I'm hoping. I hope they see him as a guy that can get to the quarterback and turn this kid loose. Because I'm telling you, he's got untapped potential as an edge rusher. But anyway, a potential late round special at the linebacker position, Egbule is a big, strapping backer with plenty of untapped talents. For starters, he can rush the quarterback. Didn't do it a ton at Houston, but in limited snaps, it's apparent that there's juice there. There's definitely juice there. He drops into coverage so effortlessly that Houston used him more in that capacity than any other, yet he can be very passive-aggressive at times, which could drive any coach nuts, which drove me absolutely nuts. When you watch this guy, he's so passive-aggressive in terms of attacking downhill when there are running plays. You see him kind of just wait for guys to attack him and wait to get blocked. And he's physical, or he'll go and attack a blocker but not attack the ball carrier. There's some questionable things that he does on the football field, and you ask yourself, why did he do that? And you're like, I'd love to talk to him and ask him, what was he thinking on this play when he decided to go attack the blocker and not attack the ball carrier, when the ball carrier was there to be attacked, and instead he goes and attacks the blocker instead. Or he instead waits on the blocker to come and engage instead of going and meeting that guy in a gap and closing up a rushing lane. He just, to me, too passive. And this is one of the reasons why he's sitting here in the 6th round. Still, there's so much potential that this selection is quite exciting for a 6th round pick. He's one of these guys that come preseason time, I'll be watching to see how he's being utilized. Because to me, if I'm the Chargers, yes, he does bring a lot of value in the department of dropping into coverage. Yes, he can drop over the slot. Yes, he does offer you value there. However, I would love to see this guy get to rush more. I think that's where his best talents lie. And I'm interested to see if the Chargers and the staff and Gus Bradley and company feel the same way. This guy makes me excited. Watching him, I almost wish the Redskins would have taken a flyer on a guy like this instead of a guy like Cole Holcomb in the 5th round, because this guy can get to the quarterback, man. I'm convinced. My comp for him is a guy that you have on your roster. They're the exact same size. They play the exact same way to me. I had the same doubts about Uchenna Nwosu last year. He played well for you. I think that this guy has a lot of Uchenna Nwosu in him. I see the same type of player. I really do. I think he actually has more upside as a rusher than Uchenna Nwosu does. And that's how highly I think of this guy's athletic ability and ability to rush the quarterback. There's something here. I don't know if the Chargers are going to get it out of him or not, but there's something here. In the 6th round, 200th overall selection, linebacker out of Houston, Umeki Egbule, for me, is and finally, we get to the 7th round, 242nd pick overall, defensive lineman out of Cincinnati, Cortez Broughton is the selection. So this pick here made a ton of sense to me. You let Darius Philon go in free agency, and to me, this is the exact replacement for Darius Philon. My comp for him is Darius Philon. That's how eerily similar these two guys' games are. Watching him on tape, you see a guy that, to me, is a one-gap penetrator. I don't think he's a two-gapper. I think he's a guy that you just turn loose and say, hey, go be disruptive. Go play on the other side of the line of scrimmage. He's quick as hell off the snap. He's a guy that can create havoc on the other side of the line of scrimmage. He's got a lot of work to do from a physical standpoint in terms of standing up to blockers and then shedding them and getting to the ball carrier. I think he's a guy that is too easily blocked once he's blocked. You know, it's hard to block him initially, but once you got him, you got him. And so, but the thing that he brings to the table that Darius was just starting to do for you is get to the quarterback. And this is a guy that had 7.5 sacks his final year at Cincinnati, which got him on the radar. And he's athletically gifted, and he brings some juice to the table. He's a high energy, high motor guy. 6'2", 293, 33-inch arms for Cortez Broughton. A defensive lineman that will have to rely on quickness unless he puts on weight and gets stronger at the NFL level. Plays with a high motor and above average athleticism, can disrupt plays in the backfield, and is a tough reach block, but doesn't possess the consistency and power teams routinely look for in a starting caliber defensive tackle. Translation to me, he's a rotational depth type of guy, not necessarily a guy you want to be relying on to start. That being said, that doesn't mean he can't develop into a potential starter in this league. I love his athleticism. I love his ability to get to the quarterback. There's something there from that standpoint. Just in the run game, I think he can be a liability at times. I think he does need to get stronger. I think he needs to work on shedding blockers and getting to the ball carrier. But in the 7th round, you know, you get guys with flaws. He has them, but he also has some talents that you can't ignore, which is what also got him drafted here in the 7th round. And so 7th round, 242nd pick overall, defensive lineman out of Cincinnati. Cortez Broughton, for me, is so a solid draft by Coupon Tom. You did not attack corner. You did not attack wide receiver. So you feel comfortable with what you're throwing out there. Again, it wouldn't shock me if a guy like Dylan Cantrell, who I actually liked out of Texas Tech, steps up for you in 2019 and shows the ability to help you at the receiver position, or Artavis Scott does, and all of a sudden you feel good about your receivers. You know, even if Travis Benjamin doesn't show up, because, you know, Travis Benjamin can be wishy-washy. So I think you're going to miss Tyrell Williams and his ability to stretch the field and his ability to be a vertical threat. That's going to hurt you because outside of Travis Benjamin, right now you don't have another guy that's a vertical threat. But Dylan Cantrell can be that guy potentially for you. And so we'll see what happens. We'll see what you do at receiver, at corner. I feel the same way I did about this team last year at corner. I thought you had a question mark at that second cornerback position. I still think you got a question mark there. You love the BYU kid. There's stuff there. I just don't know if any of it is reliable or not. And so we'll see. But bottom line is, this is a solid draft put together by Tom Telesco and company. And this is the grade that they came away with. So that's going to do it for the Chargers draft wrap up here on the Louie Tee Network. Thank you for joining me. Remember, check out the Louie Tee Network podcast. Subscribe to the Louie Tee Network. If you haven't already done so, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing when we're talking Chargers football on the upcoming season. That being said, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage it could be. Join me, your man Louie T, as we continue to break down all these drafts and all the coverage that I'll have covering the Chargers and the other 31 teams around the National Football League in the upcoming 2019 season. I'm your man Louie T, signing off. Until next time, you guys behave yourself. Have a good one.
Louie Tee.